Hello everybody. Today I'll be showing you a recipe that I have been cooking for quite a while. Today we are making chicken and rice soup. My chicken and rice soup. This is a recipe I invented, it's chicken soup, can't really invent it, when I was at my grandma's, sick, and I wanted some soup. So I decided to make some soup. Now, let's begin. Alright, to start, we have our ingredients, which are roughly, I'd say, half-ish pound of mushrooms, about, five things of green onions. These are Mexican green onions, which have bigger bulbs, but that doesn't really matter much. About half of this parsley, a large carrot. This is just some pre-chopped celery. It's half a pound of celery, so yeah. About a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of garlic. I'm using minced garlic because I'm lazy. A roast chicken. I bought a roast chicken because that's the most time-consuming part of this, and I do not have time to roast a chicken. If you have time to roast a chicken, roast a chicken. About 2.5, 3 tablespoons of soy sauce. I don't measure, if you couldn't tell. I go based off of feeling. And this is a spice mixture. It's, I'm going to guess on these measurements pretty heavily, but about a teaspoon of pepper, 2 teaspoons of ginger, a half tablespoon of garlic powder, a tablespoon of onion powder, a tablespoon of chili powder, and a tablespoon of paprika. Also, did I already say 2 teaspoons of ginger? I think I did. This is the ingredients list. It cost me, minus what we had at home, which were the spices, about $20. Not too bad considering it feeds roughly 6 people with leftovers. So now let's get to preparing. Fuck. To begin, we will start by deboning and chopping a whole chicken. Now, I will prepare you for this recipe. We do a lot of finely chopping because this was a recipe, as I said, I made at my grandma's, who does not have teeth. Now, you can make bigger cuts if you like. I honestly prefer smaller bits of food, and it blends well, as there's also rice in this. I did not include rice on the list of ingredients because I forgot to. Sorry. I'll put that in editing, I guess. Anyway, yeah. Right now I'm skinning this chicken, which you can do whatever you want with the skins. I like to fry them. You can feed them to your dog or eat them plain. I eat them plain a lot too. But yeah. Don't waste the skin. It's good. I'm going to steal a bit of this meat here because I'm hungry. Also, if you've never deboned a chicken, cooked chicken, you just kind of have to pull it apart at the joints. Here you see, you've already seen me take off the legs by just ripping them off, but you also have the wings, which you can take the meat off the wings. You don't really have to. There's not much to take off. They're also a little more annoying to deskin, so I will be setting these aside as a snack, I've decided. Maybe. I don't know. I might dice them. I might not. Like I said, measuring is for fools. Don't you just love that sound, everybody? I'm probably going to edit a lot of this out, so it doesn't matter. anyway. This is the carcass part. Here's the more hard part. You want to get your thumbs between the bone here. There's a bone, and you just want to rip that off. This will constitute the breast meat, and under the breast meat is the much more lesser known tender meat, which chicken tenders, you know. Though a lot of chicken tenders are made with chicken breast, these are two separate pieces of meat. Just a fun little tidbit of information if you didn't know that. It's the tenderloin of the bird. Also, if you don't know what to do with these bones and the skin as well, you can simply boil them into a broth for something. Heck, you could even boil them into a broth and then use that broth instead of water to cook the soup, if you have the time for that. I do not. I will simply be using water. I will, however, be boiling this later because I don't want to take all the meat off, and that's a way to not waste it. Well, I want to take all the meat off, but it's quite a time-consuming thing. I'm pretty low on time. That's about good enough. It should look like this. Pretty disgusting, I know. There. And I will see you when all of these are deboned, because these are pretty easy to debone. You know, you just rip it off. All right. All right, for this next step, you must take the chicken that you've deboned. I've deboned mine, and you must chop it. I like cleavers. This is a cleaver I got from Time and Table. It's worked pretty well so far, and, well, you just start hacking away. Let me get these out of the way first. And pretty simple. Just chop. This knife works pretty well at cutting. I don't have to use much force, and it goes clean through. If you have a less sharp knife, I recommend either getting a better knife or sharpening your knife. And if but before you do that, you want to finish cutting this, use a little extra pressure. This is not a proper way to hold a knife the way I'm doing it. The proper way is just this pinch grip and you know, rock back and forth, or just rock forward depending on how long your knife is and how short the object you're cutting is. This up and down motion is really just because I'm chopping a lot of food at once. I can show you proper technique. Well, not proper technique, as I'm still not the greatest, you know, I'm not a knife master or anything, but I can show you pretty good technique. Now, since I'm not at my grandma's, this should be pretty good. About here might be how you'd like it. Since it's medium-ish pieces, they'll get smaller as they cook. Preferably, I'd have enough time to cook it until this is all stringed up and is no longer bits of meat, just fibers, as I really like that. Whether or not you do is your decision. Now, on to actual cooking parts. Alright, so to start, you're going to take your pot. This is the pot I'm using. And you are going to give it a nice drizzle of olive oil. Let me turn a light on, actually. Can't really see it well, but I'd say that's about too much, actually. But it'll work. No, it's not too much, actually. I've decided that's about a tablespoon or two, that's about a tablespoon of olive oil. That's all I'll be putting into this. Turn your burner on to high to let it go up. There is some water in here, so I guess I will be hearing that fizzle. So I will be putting a lid on this. While it heats up, I'm going to chop the rest of my vegetables. Alright, so, because my pan is full of water, I've decided I will first be adding the chicken to try and quell the oil. The reason I'm loud is because this is loud, so I will be putting chicken in. You can just use a utensil for that. I'll show you. Alright, so we have our chicken in the pot. It is sizzling right now. You can now turn your, you can now turn your stove temperature down from high to about halfway through, about medium low. And this will cook as I prep the vegetables. Alright, so next we will be cutting this carrot. It's not in the best condition, but I promise you it is clean. I did wash it. First you will cut off the head. You can discard that. Next, you want to be very careful in this method of slicing. I'm doing coins because these will be diced later, as I don't like big chunks of carrots in my food, and neither did my grandma. So these will be diced carrots. Really doesn't matter how you dice them, as long as they're diced. Finely, mediumly, hell, keep them as coins. Probably half coins with the carrot I'm using, but you know, really depends. This is not a big hearty stew you have to chew through. It is probably more of a stew than a soup, but it's made of very small components. So, for that reason, I wouldn't really bother making big chunks of things. There's gonna be rice in this. You're gonna get a lot, maybe a bit too much textural diversity if you go the route of bigger chunks with rice and, you know, the finely diced chicken and all that. You might get a little too much diversity in the mouthfeel of everything. But, you know, people like big meaty stews. I like big meaty stews like, you know, beef and barley, that stuff. Very small bits, very large bits. So it really depends how you like your vegetables. Alright. Oh, there's a piece there. Anyway, now I'm going to begin going a bit faster now that they're smaller pieces and won't roll around as much. And this is perfectly fine if you want to stop at just a mildly diced, you know. I'm gonna go further. I want these practically brunswad. Fun fact, carrots are actually a wild vegetable that was domesticated, but the original carrots were poisonous to an extreme degree. How we managed to find an edible variety and domesticate it, I'm not entirely sure, as I doubt I'd eat something that looked like something that killed my friend, you know? But humans have been known for testing limits for their whole lifetime. This is about good for me, and this will now be set onto the side of the cutting board as I prepare our next vegetable, which is green onions. Now you can just hawk off the top part. The top part will be used later, and these bottom whites, well, these are the actual part of the onion you want to use. If you're using smaller green onions, they have stems on them. Mexican green onions, the one I'm using, for some reason, either have them cut off or have extremely small stems, which you're not really going to notice, so I'm not going to bother. These you can just chop because they are going to fall apart pretty much in the soup, and so it doesn't really matter. These are a little harder to dice because of their shape, so, you know, whatever. Maybe I will be at least giving a little go at dicing them instead of just cutting them. But in the end, it doesn't really matter. It seems the chicken's getting hot, so I'm going to go stir that real quick. I accidentally stopped the recording. Right now I am just, I finished chopping the vegetables, broke out the chopped celery and the onions, and it will, I'm putting it into a bowl to add to the soup right now. My apologies. Alright, and now to the soup we go. Alright, we have our chicken, which has been steaming up pretty well, and to it I will add our vegetables. Just dump those in there, and a mix, you know? Now that's mixed, I will be dicing the mushrooms. Mushrooms are completely optional. I found it doesn't really take away much if you don't add them, but I like mushrooms, so I will be adding them. Alright, first I will take our mushrooms. These are white baby bells. I got these because they're cheapest. And every other, you know, brown mushroom, big mushroom. Those are portobellas, baby bells, and the big old mushrooms you see in stores. Those are all the same thing. They're going to taste basically the same. They look basically the same, so it doesn't really matter. These I will put bigger chunks because I like bigger chunks of mushroom, but they're still going to be relatively small. Well, they're relatively big. They're going to be pretty small still. Basically, just until they stop fidgeting around is when you can stop chopping. These are very easy to chop. If your knife doesn't go through them, you desperately need to sharpen your knives. The chicken I can somewhat understand if your knife's a little dull, but these, there's no excuse. Sharpen your knives, get a better knife, I don't care. But first, cut them. And now they will be added to the soup as well, because mushrooms are very high in water, which you kind of want to cook down so that they can begin cooking properly. Alright, now to our vegetables, we will add the mushrooms, which go in pretty easily. If you notice any big pieces you wanted to chop more, like this one right here, just break it with your spoon, ladle, whatever it's called, I don't remember. And yeah. Ooh, fogging up the camera pretty bad here. I'm sorry for that, but hey. This cooking, it's to be expected. You can basically see what I'm doing. Oh yeah, that fogged up the camera. Let me wipe that off. Yeah. Alright, now to all this, you can add your spices, which you should have remembered. I'll first deciding I'm going to add soy sauce to, deepen it. Soy sauce, despite people thinking it's just very salty, is actually the main compound flavor of mainly the flavor umami, which is a deep, rich flavor you get from things like meat, tomatoes, mushrooms, green tea. If you want a really good example, I'd essentially just eat a can of tomato paste. That's a really good example of umami outside of soy sauce, which is still very salty. That's why you didn't see me add salt. You can add salt liberally later if you want. But I probably will. Almost just broke this container, which is not actually made for soy sauce. It is a it is a tea container. Next, I'll add the garlic, which is pretty delicate. You don't want to burn it. Probably doesn't really matter, though, because this is a soup. You won't be burning it, because we're not frying it. And lastly, the spices. I will be adding more or less later on. Like I said, measurements are for chumps. I can't be adding less. I will be adding more of some things, though. And now you can really see it begin to take form. Let me stir this up real quick. Alright, now you should have a pot of sludge that has been severely browned. This can cook for about 10 minutes, stirring semi-regularly. This will help break down the chicken into those strands, stop it from burning at the bottom, and cook the vegetables in their own steam so that just because. Oh, also, at this point, you can add the rice, or you can add it later. I've never actually added the rice at this point. I think it will get a lot of nice flavors from soaking here instead of in the fully done soup, so I will actually be adding that now. The amount of rice is about a cup. Once again, I say eyeball it, because measuring's for chumps. Alright, now to the pot, I'm going to add my rice. This is some long grain jasmine rice. If you don't like jasmine rice, seek help immediately. I'm serious. There's something wrong with you if you think jasmine rice is bad. Alright, now that everything's thoroughly mixed, I will put a lid on it and give it 5 minutes. Alright, now that it has been about 5-10-ish minutes, make sure you want to have made sure nothing is burnt. If you burned anything, considering the spices, I guess you can just make it Cajun now. But anyway, I will be adding enough water to cover it. Also, shout out to Ella and Ella, Grayson, Julia, and Mr. Big Chin. You know who you are. Those are, the girls. They're current subscribers, recent subscribers, and also the Big Chin guy. He's also a subscriber. He's there, This is a much smaller volume than I had last time. I'm thinking I need more rice, so I will add that post-haste. Alright, I've added a little more rice, and it's looking much better already. Now is the big moment where you want to taste it. Make sure it's tasting alright. I'm going to do so. Make sure it still is like everything I've ever had before. Look at that glistening. You can see small bits of oil, preferably not too much. But, obviously, oil is flavor, so, And as expected, it does need 2 things. A little more water. I'm doubling the amount of water in it. And I'm going to also add double the soy sauce and maybe even salt after, because this is pretty bland on that aspect. Alright, adding soy sauce, and we'll see how much better that does now. I might also add some extra ginger and onion powder. You can also add peas to this. I've done that before, and that worked out splendidly. I can imagine a leafy green being good in here too, something like kale. Yeah, so far I will add a bit of salt and a bit of ginger. I added an extra half teaspoon or so of ginger. Once again, at this point, you can begin spicing to your content. I really recommend messing around with this recipe, as it's very versatile and is very hard to mess up. Anyway, yeah. Let this simmer for about half an hour, and it will be ready. And I mean simmer, so that's now from medium-low to low-medium, or from now to low, maybe medium-low still, but I really recommend low. And for me, low is not going to actually be low. I'm going to put it about here. So maybe that's closer to medium-low. I don't really know or care. Yeah. Alright, folks, now that it's been a good 30 minutes, you can begin dicing your green vegetables, like the greens of your onion and your parsley and anything else you'd like to add. There are probably other things that go really well with this. Cilantro is not one of them because I have the soap gene. But I'm sure if you don't, cilantro might go amazingly with this soup. What I'm now noticing too is Mexican green onions also have a thicker inside, which means I probably should have bunched them in with the rest, but whatever. It's not gonna make a big enough difference to where I'm gonna be too bothered, so who really cares? Ooh. Anyway, green onions chopped successfully. And these herbs are honestly going to be the biggest chunks in this soup for me. And like I said, I don't really know how much, but about something amount of parsley. I don't honestly know how much parsley you want to use in anything, because it's parsley. It's never bad. You can never have too much parsley. Also, if you couldn't tell, this soup is a bit of a hodgepodge of different flavors. Like I said, some of their flavors are more burnt and based upon the flavors of the pot, like Cajun food is. Some flavors are soy sauce and garlic and ginger, like you would in East Asian and South Asian flavors. Well, not soy sauce for South Asian flavors, but you know. There's Mexican green onions, you know. Where do you think those are from? And parsley, which is native to Italy and the Middle East. It's also combined with some more European cooking styles, such as the way I'm dicing a lot of these vegetables, and mushrooms, Italian. And yeah, this is a very multicultural dish. It works well with a lot of things. It's very interchangeable too. If you don't like something, you can swap it out with something you do like that's a decent replacement. Don't like rice, add a potato. Don't like chicken? Well, this is a chicken soup. You probably should like chicken if you're making it. All right, back to the pot we go. Now that we have our vegetables or our greens nice and chopped into the pot for roughly 5 or so minutes. I'm gonna add these last because they wilt. And, well, I end up having to cook this longer because, like I said, the greens of Mexican green onions are much thicker than regular green onions, but that is not a problem. Like I said, very easy soup. It's like the salmon of soup. You can't really go wrong, you know? And now I'm gonna turn the heat off and let this cool down. Alright, now that the soup is a little cooler, just at our slow rolling boil, I'm going to add some cold water. Not too much, just maybe half a cup or so. And that should rapidly cool it down, add back a lot of the water it was missing, and voila, it is done. Now time for me to serve up a plate. Bowl. Fuck. Alright, and there you have it. A delicious chicken soup. Now, let's dig in, shall we? Alright, here we go. Hot. Okay. Let me give it some time to cool. Wait, hold up. Let me give it some time to cool. That is absolutely fantastic. Now, guys, gals, gender queer pals, anything in or out of the spectrum, I must say goodbye to you, and may you see me again in another episode of Matt Cooks.